Alison Baker on the BT Couch, Strata lawyer. This is a really interesting topic. I mean, real estate, everybody talks about it here in Vancouver specifically, but Strata windups have become a thing. And why do you find this has become a popular talking point, especially over the past year?
So the government amended the legislation about a year ago, or just over a year ago, to provide that strata corporations could wind up with only 80% of the vote. Prior to that, it had always been a possibility to wind up, but you needed all of the owners in the building to say yes. Now, if you can get 80% of the owners or 80% of the votes to say yes, you can go through a court process where the court will ultimately confirm or not confirm the vote of the owners.
So you have developers potentially approaching older buildings. What do you see for age distinction to have stratas be winding up right now?
Most of the stratas I'm dealing with right now are winding up or looking at it are about 30 to 40 years old. They're the older strata corporations, the first ones that were stratified in British Columbia. But I have one client that's 20 years old that's going through the winding up process. In most cases, what's motivating the owners is large repair bills or renewal bills because of the age of their buildings. But in other cases, it's a factor of their location. They happen to be in a prime development location in the Lower Mainland for developers to approach them to say, are you interested? Or in many other cases, it's actually commercial real estate brokers, knowing that that's a potentially attractive development site, that is approaching them and saying, would you like to list with us?
So if you're part of that 80% vote of a strata saying, you know what, let's go ahead, let's wind this thing up and get this building sold, what's the first point of consideration for advice that you give to homeowners to really look at to proceed with this?
Okay, so the first piece of advice I would say is owners are in control of this process, but get good advice. The strata corporation and the owners are the ones who are ultimately going to decide whether to sell their property or not. But in order to make sure that the process is defendable, particularly if you have to go to court to get a court order to approve the winding up, you'll need good advice. And that means getting a good real estate broker working with you. Most of the windings up are being conducted through a commercial real estate broker who will be more familiar with the development side of the industry and therefore more familiar with potential purchasers for a site. The strata should also look at getting legal advice to assist the strata corporation through the process, from looking at things like the listing agreement with the broker, what votes you need in order to pursue the process, getting into court, purchase and sale agreements, all of those things need advice.
Look, what if you're on the other side saying, you know what, I want to stay put. This has been my home for years, and even though 80% want to move forward,
yep.
How do you get involved in the process to stop it from happening then?
Well, the first thing is for every owner, and I say this when I go to strata meetings, which I do on a regular basis, is everybody gets to vote on this and everybody has a say. And ultimately, it's your decision to make whether you want to vote yes or no. If your strata corporation decides to vote yes, but doesn't have 100%, as I mentioned, an owner who is not in favor of the process can participate in the court proceedings. They can do so on their own, or they can hire a lawyer to advocate on their behalf in the court process.
In the Strata Property Act, looking this up, I thought it was very interesting of how valuations break down, because in some cases the developer could, approach the homeowner directly. But what's the key to keep in mind of how these units are evaluated to determine what you're taking home?
So the Strata Property Act basically says that depending on when your strata plan was filed, a particular formula applies. For newer strata corporations, say 2000 and onwards, we don't have any of those yet, looking at winding up because that's pretty recent, it would be assessed value. But for older strata corporations, most of them have something called the Schedule of Interest on Destruction. That is the table that will be used to split up the money amongst the owners. In some cases where the strata doesn't have a Schedule of Interest on Destruction, and these are really, really old stratas, early 1960s mid-1960s to early 1970s, it will be based on the Schedule of Unit Entitlement. And that's the formula that's used to calculate everybody's strata fees on a monthly basis.
Really interesting trend that's happening, but great information and a great starting point that you've introduced if you at home have that consideration with the developer in your building. Alison, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Great information once again.